In this lesson, we're going to cover working with the mini guides that InDesign includes to help guide exactly where you place the objects, elements, and frames on your page. I'm going to have you start by creating a new document. This way I can show you the settings to enter for the most basic guides, and you can see what the results of that are. So I'm going to go up to the File menu. I'm going to hover over New and select Document. In this case, I just want one page, just so I can show an example of what these different guides are. I'm going to deselect facing pages because if you just have one page, that doesn't really matter. So the guides we're going to look at initially are going to be the column guides, the margin guides, the bleed guides, and the slug guides. And those are all set based on the numbers that you enter as you set the document itself up. So I'm starting with just a default letter size document. Width is 8.5 inches, height is 11 inches, and I'm going to enter 3 for the number of columns so that those column guides will be more apparent. If I just enter 1, the column guides and the margin guides will be the same. Here, again, the margin guides, and we talked about this. If I hit this little link button, the margin guides will all be the same. If I hit it again and unlink them, I can set different options for my margin guides. But in this case, I'm just going to leave it the default of 1/2 inch. For the bleed, I'm going to set a bleed of 0.125 inches, and I'm going to set all of them the same. And that's just to show you where that bleed line falls. 1/8 of an inch is very typical for bleed, so that's a good number to remember if you think you're going to be working with print documents. And also in this case, I'm going to add a slug. I don't usually add slug in my documents. Some printers may require it. But in this case, I'm just going to add a 1-inch slug at the bottom of my document. And I'm going to go ahead and say OK. So you can see here there are a number of lines already on my document. I'm just going to click on the zoom tool, hold down the Alt key, and zoom out a little bit so that you can see the rest of that slug guide there at the bottom. So you can see there are a number of different colored lines. We talked about a few of them before, but this red line around the document is the bleed line, the black line is the actual edge of your document, and then the pink and purple guides represent the margin and column guides. So the margin guides are the ones that define the edge around your page, and the column guides are the ones that create these 3 columns across the page. And last but not least, the slug guide is this bluish line kind of down at the bottom here. So those are sort of the basic default guides that are set up when you set up a new document. If you don't want to see the guides, you can temporarily turn them off by holding the Control key and clicking the semicolon. And that will quickly turn the guides on and off so that you can look at your work both with the guides and without the guides. InDesign has a couple of other guides that are also built into the document. The first thing I want to talk about is smart guides. And what these help you to do is to draw objects in relation to each other as you place them on the page. So I'll show you. I'm going to select the rectangle tool. I'm going to set it to a neutral color rather than that pink because I think it'll be a little easier to see. And then I'm going to go up to the View menu, down to Grids and Guide, and make sure I have a check mark here next to Smart Guides. If Smart Guides isn't checked, then I won't see the Smart Guides show up. So if you want to work with Smart Guides, you need to make sure that they're checked in that View menu. I'm going to cancel out of that box. I hit it by accident. And I'm going to click in the upper corner and drag a box. You can see immediately as I start to draw my box that I get width and height markings. That's one of the features of Smart Guides, to tell you exactly the dimensions of what you're drawing. I'm just going to draw it to fill that first column. The Smart Guides don't tell me a lot when I just have a single object on the page. But when I start to draw a second object, you can start to see the Smart Guides show up with that second object. So now, right now, those green lines are my Smart Guides, and those are telling me that my 2 objects are exactly the same height. If I want 2 objects that are exactly the same height, then this will help me to know exactly where to stop drawing. You can see now that I get a little farther over that they're also showing me that the 2 objects are the same width. I no longer just have a vertical arrow indicating the height, but also a horizontal arrow indicating the width of my objects. So those smart guides act as a guide showing me how to draw those objects in relation to each other to try to create similarly sized and similarly spaced objects. The four things that the smart guides will show you about your objects is if the objects are aligned to the center of the page. So if I scroll slowly over the center, you can see as my drawing hits the center, I get a red line right down the center. That tells me I'm aligned to the center of the page. It will also show me if my object edges are aligned. So as I line up with my first object, I get both that height arrow, and then also it will tell me if what are called smart dimensions. It will show me both the width and height, and it will show me if the dimensions between my two objects are the same. And the last thing it will show me is if the spacing between my objects are the same. So as I draw a third object, it should start to show me that I have similar spacing between my objects as well. So those smart guides can be really useful if you're just trying to draw something and throw it in the page quickly. You can follow those to get a uniform shape and spacing across the objects that you're adding.